This seems to be the opposite of that. It seems to be so many instances, I think, where wokeness is the opposite of what I grew up as liberalism. Liberalism was, let's give the women an equal shot. This is, let's put a male in the swimming pool with the women. I don't get it.
It's crazy. And meanwhile, trans people who genuinely want to compete at athletics and swimming or whatever it may be, they're the ones who are suffering here. They need to be found a way to compete fairly and justly.
Social justice warriors who are fond of governing by hashtag like to say silence is violence. And we know that because it rhymes? The words victim and survivor have traveled a long way from their original usage. The baby from the Nirvana album says he's a victim. He's suing Nirvana for lifelong damages. I never thought I'd have to say this to a baby, but stop being such a baby.
Bill Maher and Piers Morgan just teamed up to roast a woke guest, and it was pure gold. The two, famous for calling out nonsense, went head-to-head with Katie Porter over Riley Gaines in women's sports. Every time Porter tried to make a point, Maher and Morgan hit back with sharp logic and savage humor. It was fiery, hilarious, and brutally honest, classic Maher and Morgan energy.
We should be able to have a civil debate. Nobody, including Riley Gaines, who I disagree with strongly, should be
What do you disagree with, out of interest?
I think that it should be up to sporting bodies to make the decisions about who and how should compete.
What has she said that's actually wrong?
I think that what she has done is try to turn this. We talked about people, using things to kind of get likes and get clicks.
That's not what she's doing. I've got no truck for Riley Gaines personally, but all I've seen her do is stand up for women's rights to fairness and equality.
Well,
she actually competed against Leah Thomas, and it was obviously unfair. Leah Thomas won one of the races in the NCAA championships by 50 seconds against a bunch of biological females who simply couldn't keep up. That cannot be right. It cannot be fair.
Katie Porter started by criticizing Riley Gaines for defending women's sports, saying decisions about trans athletes should be left to sporting authorities. But Piers Morgan quickly shut that down with hard scientific facts, highlighting the undeniable physical advantages men have in strength, speed, and endurance. Porter tried to argue back, but Morgan and Bill Maher teamed up, using sharp logic and humor to dismantle her points. It wasn't a debate, it was a brutal reality check Porter never saw coming.
That is something that I think our sporting bodies should be dealing with. And by the way, Riley is speaking up for herself, and that is her prerogative, and I respect her free speech.
I think she's speaking up for pretty much every female athlete in the world.
I mean, wasn't that the point of Title IX? Title IX in the early 70s was something that was it was a major event in feminism, that we finally have this law that says at colleges, right, and I think high schools too, but definitely colleges, women's sports have to be given equal to men's sports so that women aren't and this led to the WNBA and lots of other stuff.
Katie Porter tried to regain control of the debate by painting Riley Gaines as a self-centered athlete chasing fame rather than fairness. But Piers Morgan wasn't having it. With his trademark confidence and precision, he fired back, reminding everyone that Riley's fight isn't personal. It's principled. She's standing up for all female athletes forced to compete under unfair conditions. Maher backed him up, and the entire tone of the discussion changed. Porter's argument crumbled as Morgan reframed Gaines not as an attention seeker, but as a voice for truth, fairness, and biological integrity in women's sports.
This seems to be the opposite of that. It seems to be so many instances, I think, where wokeness is the opposite of what I grew up as liberalism. Liberalism was, let's give the women an equal shot. This is, let's put a male in the swimming pool with the women. I don't get it.
It's crazy. And meanwhile, trans people who genuinely want to compete at athletics and swimming or whatever it may be, they're the ones who are suffering here. They need to be found a way to compete fairly and justly.
Then Bill Maher jumped in with a cutting rebuttal that left Katie Porter scrambling. Citing Title IX, the groundbreaking law that secured equality and opportunity for women in sports, he reminded everyone how much progress had been achieved over decades of hard-fought battles. Maher argued that letting biological males compete in women's divisions doesn't expand equality. It destroys it. Those policies, he said, don't level the field. They tilt it backward. erasing the very protections that empower generations of female athletes. The studio grew tense as Maher laid out his point with surgical precision, connecting fairness, biology, and law in one blistering statement. When he finished, there was nothing left to add. It was a mic drop moment that summed up the entire debate.
Well, what's your answer then?
I think there's one or two answers. I think they either compete against their biological sex, as many of them did before, or you create an entirely new category for a transgender athlete. And then they're able to compete fairly. But what you cannot do is continue to allow more and more trans athletes to start decimating women's records, in some cases, irrevocably. It's just not fair.
Okay, I got to end it there.
Then Bill Maher jumped in with a cutting rebuttal that left Katie Porter scrambling. Citing Title IX, the groundbreaking law that secured equality and opportunity for women in sports, he reminded everyone how much progress had been achieved over decades of hard-fought battles. Maher argued that letting biological males compete in women's divisions doesn't expand equality. It destroys it. Those policies, he said, don't level the field. They tilt it backward, erasing the very protections that empower generations of female athletes. The studio grew tense as Maher laid out his point with surgical precision, connecting fairness, biology, and law in one blistering statement. When he finished, there was nothing left to add. It was a mic drop moment that summed up the entire debate.
Well, here's my 8 words people need to stop redefining. Hate, victim, hero, shame, violence, survivor, phobic, and white supremacy. Comedian Hannah Gadsby characterized Dave Chappelle's controversial Netflix special as hate speech dog whistling. Well, dog whistle refers to when someone puts things in code because they're afraid to come out and say what they really think. That's what you get from Dave Chappelle? He's afraid to say what he really thinks?
And on that point, I completely agree. The only fair and logical solution is to create a separate category for transgender athletes, one that allows open, equal, and authentic competition. This isn't about exclusion. It's about fairness for everyone. Trans athletes deserve a platform free of controversy, and biological women deserve assurance that their playing field remains level. Sports are built on integrity, not forced equality, and as Maher and Morgan made clear, real progress means protecting that principle.
And it's not hate speech just because you disagree with it, nor is it phobic. Phobic comes from the Greek word for something one fears irrationally, like spiders or germs, but now is used as a suffix for anything you just don't like. I've been called commitment phobic. No, I don't fear commitment, I just don't want it. No. Other people do. Great. I don't call them single phobic. I don't like bowling. I'm not bowling phobic. And if I talk about how wrong I think it is to force women to wear a beekeeper suit all day, that's not being Islamophobic. I just don't like it. And I bet they don't either. I went as a ghost for Halloween once. I lasted about 20 minutes.
Of all the men who carefully tiptoe around the woke mob, Dave Chappelle is definitely not one of them. He's the rare kind of comedian who refuses to censor himself or sugarcoat the truth. Whether he's addressing race, gender, or politics, Chappelle dives straight into controversy with fearless wit and raw honesty. He's faced boycotts, backlash, and endless outrage campaigns, yet every time he comes back sharper and bolder than before. Chappelle doesn't just make people laugh, he makes them think. His comedy slices through hypocrisy and exposes the absurdity of a culture obsessed with outrage. In a world where truth is often silenced for comfort, Dave Chappelle stands tall, proving that real comedy isn't about compliance, it's about courage.
Also in the category of we just don't like it, so we're pretending it's something else, is the word violence. Last year, there was a staff mutiny at the CBS drama All Rise when some of the writers, I'm sorry, I meant victims, took issue with a scene where 2 women are in an elevator and a naked man gets on, and they just continue talking calmly. And if you think that's offensive, you should see how the guy pushed the button. But the writers on this show found the scene objectionable and sent off an email saying, two women would not calmly continue a conversation with a naked white guy running into the elevator. That is violence. No, it's not.
Exactly. The word phobia has become one of the most overused and misapplied terms in modern discourse. Disagreeing with an idea doesn't make someone fearful of it. Yet today, any form of critique is instantly branded as hate. This manipulation of language has turned words into weapons, tools to silence debate, rather than inspire understanding. Instead of fostering open dialogue, these labels create division and fear, pushing people into silence rather than conversation. Real progress comes from challenging ideas, not shielding them from scrutiny. We need to bring back honest debate, where differing opinions aren't punished but respected. When every disagreement is met with accusation instead of reason, free thought dies quietly, and what's left is conformity masquerading as compassion.
Violence is when it hurts. It usually involves leaving a mark of some kind. Of course, innumerable things can lead to violence, but I'm sorry, you can't take that word and use it for stuff that's just scary to you or just verbal, which is something I literally learned in kindergarten. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but if you don't know how that one ends, you need to repeat kindergarten. Social justice warriors who are fond of governing by hashtag like to say silence is violence.
I genuinely don't understand how that qualifies as violence. We've reached a stage where words like violence and trauma are thrown around so loosely that they've lost all meaning. Not everything uncomfortable or offensive equals harm. A naked man stepping into an elevator is indecent, yes, but not violent. Expanding definitions like this trivializes real suffering and turns emotional discomfort into a crisis. Offense isn't violence. It's part of freedom.
Social justice warriors who are fond of governing by hashtag like to say silence is violence. And we know that because it rhymes? The words victim and survivor have traveled a long way from their original usage. The baby from the Nirvana album says he's a victim. He's suing Nirvana for lifelong damages. I never thought I'd have to say this to a baby, but stop being such a baby.
Violence, by definition, involves physical harm, the intentional act of inflicting injury or damage on someone's body. While words and actions can absolutely cause emotional or psychological pain, that's not the same as physical violence. Somewhere along the way, society blurred this crucial line, often on purpose, to equate discomfort with assault. That distortion might seem empathetic, but it actually diminishes the reality of true victims of violence. When everything becomes violence, nothing serious stands out anymore. Yes, emotional pain is real and deserves compassion, but redefining terms to fit an agenda only breeds confusion. We need clarity, not exaggeration. Precision in language protects both empathy and justice, because mixing emotional hurt with physical violence doesn't elevate either issue. It just weakens both.
In 2010, the New York Times used the term white supremacist on 75 occasions. Last year, over 700 times. Now, some of that, to be sure, is because Trump came along and emboldened the faction of this country that is truly white supremacist. It is, of course, still a real thing. But it shouldn't apply to something like, as more than a few have suggested, getting rid of the SAT test. Now, if we find the SAT test is slanted in such a way as to stack the deck in favor of Caucasians, if there are questions like, Biff and Chip are sailing a yacht, traveling at 12 knots to an Ed Sheeran concert on Catalina. If Catalina is 26 miles away, how many White Claws should they bring? Yes, then maybe, yeah.
This one's honestly hilarious. Imagine suing a legendary band for lifelong damages because they used your baby photo on an iconic album cover. A photo taken decades ago, before you could even remember it. Suddenly, it's trauma. Please. It reeks less of pain and more of opportunism. When fame fades, some people chase headlines instead of honesty. At the end of the day, what connects all these moments, from Katie Porter's meltdown on Real Time to the misuse of words like violence and phobia, to that ridiculous lawsuit against a rock band, is one undeniable truth. Common sense is disappearing. We've entered an era where feelings overpower facts, where words are manipulated for control, and where outrage matters more than accountability. Voices like Bill Maher, Piers Morgan, and Dave Chappelle stand out not because they're flawless, but because they still speak plainly in a world terrified of honesty. They remind us that truth isn't cruelty, and discomfort isn't harm. If society keeps confusing disagreement with danger and criticism with hate, we'll destroy the very foundation of open dialogue. What we need isn't censorship or victimhood. It's a revival of reason, resilience, and unfiltered honesty.